Hello, audio people. Wanted to give you a tour of Pro Tools today, just in case this is maybe the first, sort of time that you're going through the software, or maybe you've used it once or twice and haven't really thought about it much since. We're going to be making use of it a lot in this course. So again, just sort of a tour of the, how it's all laid out and some of the essential functions that you're going to need. I'll be using a little bit of audio content just so I can provide some context to some of the things that I'm talking about. But there'll be further in-depth videos on things that we specifically are doing in class in Pro Tools. When you open up Pro Tools, your icon might look a little bit differently. Actually, throughout this process, things might look a little bit different on my version, just because I'm working on the latest version that's here in the production office. So if you're working on Pro Tools first, if you're working on a lab computer that maybe hasn't been updated for a semester, things might look a little bit differently, but basically each version has a function that is going to be very similar. So when I begin, I get this dialog box that's asking me sort of what do I want to be doing with Pro Tools. All right, what do I want to name my project here? So I'll call it Phil's Test. And I want to create this on the local computer. And I'm not going to create from a template. I want to just start with a fresh blank Pro Tools session. This stuff down here can be important at times. It's important information to understand, and we'll be discussing sample rate and bit depth and file type and all that stuff. But you are limited sometimes or restricted by the operating system or your current computer setup. So you see right here, I'm not even allowed to change my sample rate on this system. So this is sort of what I have to go with. The good news is that your assignments will have specific sample rate and file requirements upon export. But regardless of how you start your session, you can always export into the appropriate format. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep these settings here and create a blank session on the local desktop. Okay, so here's the a clean blank screen for Pro Tools, and this is what's known as the edit window. This is where eventually we would drop audio content and you would see the waveforms here and various audio tracks, and then your timeline obviously up here. There is another window. So there's two main work views. There's the edit window, which we're looking at here, and there's also the mix window, which right now doesn't appear to have much in it because it will eventually look like a virtual mixer when I add audio content in there. And that's a little bit more used for music mixing and that type of project, or when you're just in the mixing stage. Most of the time I'm working in the edit window so that I can see the waveforms, and I'm working with time-based things. So that's sort of what I need to know. Okay, so we've got a timeline that's showing us various information that is shown here: bars and beats, minutes and seconds, time code. Based on what kind of project you are, you might need your timeline to be based on one of these various things. And you can remove or show more of these things. Like, for example, one of the first projects we'll be doing is working on radio production. So minutes and seconds is a crucial timing measurement for radio production. But I don't necessarily need bars and beats because I'm not working with music. So I could remove bars and beats here. Okay, so you can sort of customize these areas so I don't have to see necessarily the stuff that I don't want to see. So now I've limited myself just to the timeline. Up here is what's known as the transport, and this is your basic controls that you would see on any sort of audio player device, right? The play and stop button, record, fast forward, and move yourself around. These two areas here are all about counting and measuring the timeline. So I've changed myself into minutes and seconds here. Then I would want to use this drop down to make sure that I'm showing minutes and seconds on my counter. Okay, let's go ahead and get a piece of audio in here so we can explore a little bit further. Now, you can usually drag and drop audio content into a Pro Tools session, into the timeline, however you want, just like grabbing from a folder and drag and drop in here. That's restricted sometimes by the file size or file type, But also, you should know in Pro Tools, there's always more than one way to do something, and oftentimes the long way is the better way, or is the less problematic way. So I'm going to import audio the long way by going to File and Import Audio, and navigate to the area that I'm going to grab audio from, which is my hard drive that I've plugged in. This is a good time also to mention just how important it is to have your own external hard drive to work off of. Pro Tools is a pretty CPU heavy program, so if you're working from an external drive, you're going to reduce some issues that come along with that. So let's see. Apparently I didn't double click. You got to get it over here. All right, then I hit done. And it's going to ask me, do I want to add this to my clip list, or I want to just like add it to a list of stuff that's living inside Pro Tools but not visualized here, or do I want to create a new track and put it there? And how do I want it to be placed? I want it to be at a specific spot or just at the beginning. So session start. I'll hit OK, and there's my piece of audio. And it's created an audio track along with it. Now I can resize this by hovering over the edge of the audio clip, which I like to do just to increase the real estate of what I'm looking at. And then right here are some of my zoom controls. I have preset zoom controls that I can automatically go to, or I can use these arrows here to sort of expand as I see fit. There we go. Let's take a listen.
The WBGU request line.
All right, so this is some, silly little, examples of reads for little things for a radio station. Once audio is in here, some of the basic functions that I might be doing are editing it. And these guys up here are all my editing tools. So you're going to become very familiar with these. My grabber tool, well, let's start at the edge. So here's my trimmer tool. If I hover over it, the trim tool. This is going to allow me to trim from side to side and remove content from one side of an audio clip to another. What you need to understand, and what is great about Pro Tools, is that material is not gone now. I can just reveal it again, right? It's just being hidden. The next tool is Selector Tool, and that allows me to make a specific selection. It turns my cursor into like a selector. And I can make selections and then hit the delete key to remove something, and then Control Z to bring it back. But the selector tool. And then finally here with a hand is known as the grabber tool. And that's going to allow me to grab an audio clip and move it in the timeline, as opposed to selecting a portion of it. Now it can be pretty tedious to go back and forth, make an edit, switch to the hand grabber tool, and move things around. So I'm going to undo those things. What I want you to understand is that this little bracket that goes over the editing tools is called the Smart tool. So when I click that, it sort of encompasses all three of those main tools that I was telling you about. And now I can use all three of those just based on where my cursor is located on the audio track. So if I'm on the bottom half of an audio track, it turns into the grabber tool and I can move around. If I'm on the top half, it turns into the trimmer tool, or it's a selector tool, and I can make selections. If I go towards the edges, it turns into the trimmer tool. It also gives this little bonus feature that is up in the corners. It'll turn into this little square, which allows me to make fades. So all that is really useful in order for me to sort of increase efficiency and my workflow, and how things, to just improve my style here. And just make me more efficient in Pro Tools. On the side of the audio track, under the name, you have the record button. This is an input monitoring button. We can kind of ignore this one for now. And then we have a solo button and a mute button. So if I had more than one audio track on here and I only wanted to hear this one for some reason at one particular time, then I could solo it, and then that would be the only thing that I heard. Or if I had, say, 10 audio tracks on here and I wanted to hear all of them except for this one, I could easily just mute this one, and it won't be played back. When I play this back, you'll see the meter over here, which is an important sort of tool to use as a resource or a measurement of how loud things are.
419-372-8810.
So we wouldn't necessarily want to be pushing that all the way up in the red all the time. That's a good visualization of just, the strength of your audio signals. There's also a meter
419-372-8810.
This is a master meter. So this is showing you just how loud all the audio content in your session is. This would be individual to this particular audio track. So if I had more audio tracks in here and lots of other things going, they would all be funneled into this area. Okay, the final thing that I want to give you for this small tour of Pro Tools is up here in the upper left-hand corner, which is Edit Modes. Right now, I'm in what's called slip mode, which means that I can take an audio clip and move it freely in the timeline wherever I want without restrictions. Okay, and when I make an edit, like if I remove this bit of silence, the piece that is removed goes away, and the other pieces just stay where they are. Okay, that's different than, say, if I were in shuffle mode. Watch this. First of all, I can't move my audio clip right now. It doesn't work. And when I eliminate this silence, watch what happens. It shuffles that piece of audio right over next to where the next piece of audio is. So if I were to do that over again and make the cut in slip mode, they would stay there together. And then if I added myself or switched to shuffle mode, the only place I could move this, can't move it over here, I can move it directly next to the other clip though. So that sort of restricts my movement. But this is a useful tool, shuffle, if you're going through and maybe you have a long voiceover and somebody maybe doing an audiobook and somebody was reading, a whole bunch, but you're just eliminating breaths and noise. So you're just getting rid of little bits and pieces. Using shuffle mode is incredible to eliminate that step where you have to then move a clip after you've made the edit. It does the moving for you. So that's pretty nice. Spot mode, I can tell you that I've never once used this because it's just so impractical. That allows me to click an audio clip and then say exactly where I want it to go. So you would have to know the exact timing of where you want that to go, what time scale you want to move it in, and all that stuff. So that one's just a pretty impractical method for most of the purposes that I use Pro Tools. Grid mode, however, we will use, which allows us to create these lines that match along with what our grid is set at, in this case, 1 second. So that means that I can only move this audio clip to match, to be on the edge of that 1 second mark. Now that can be a useful tool for us in radio production if we want to make sure that a piece of audio is exactly so many seconds long. This will force us to get there that way. Most of the time I'm working in slip mode and then switching between shuffle mode as necessary, and then I use grid mode as like sort of these special occasion sort of tools that I need. All right, that's it for the Pro Tools overview for right now. We're going to go into more in-depth things, as we continue through the course and we have more specific things to cover. But I thought this would just give you, a little bit of experience just navigating through Pro Tools and, how to make use of the tools that are essential for us moving forward. See you next time.